You probably think of a heart attack as something that happens to older people, your 50s, your 60s, maybe your 70s. But here's the thing nobody talks about openly. The damage that causes a heart attack at 55 didn't start at 55. It started at 25. And in some cases, even earlier. Researchers once examined the arteries of young people aged 15 to 34 who had died in accidents. These were otherwise healthy young people. No known heart conditions, no prior diagnoses. What they found was striking. Every single teenager in the study, without exception, already had early changes in their arterial walls. By their mid-20s, raised deposits that protrude into the artery itself were present in a significant proportion. Heart disease wasn't waiting until middle age to begin. It was already underway in adolescence. And today, the data shows that roughly 1 in 5 heart attacks in the US occurs in someone under 35. A quarter of those happen in people with no traditional risk factors at all. This isn't a rare outlier problem. It's a trend that's been accelerating, and modern life is driving it. In this video, we're going to break down exactly why this is happening, what's going on inside young arteries that nobody can feel, and what you can do about it while the window to act is still wide open. Because that window is wide, but it isn't permanent. Part 1. What's actually happening inside your arteries right now? Most people picture heart disease as a sudden event, a blockage, a collapse, an ambulance. But the process that leads to that moment is slow, silent, and it begins decades earlier. Here's how it works. Every artery in your body is lined with a microscopically thin layer of living cells, the inner coating of the blood vessel. This layer is remarkable. It produces a chemical that keeps blood vessels relaxed, flexible, and open. It's the body's built-in system for protecting the arterial wall. When this lining is healthy, blood flows smoothly. The vessel responds normally. Everything works. But over time, through chronic inflammation, blood sugar spikes, stress hormones, and inadequate sleep, this inner lining gets damaged. It becomes rougher, less functional. Immune cells arrive at the injury sites, accumulate, and gradually, layer by layer, a deposit builds up inside the artery wall. Cholesterol, calcium, fibrous tissue. That deposit is called plaque. In the early stages, it sits silently. No symptoms, no pain, nothing on a standard check. The plaque can grow for 10, 15, 20 years before it ever causes a problem, until one day it does. A rupture, a clot, a blocked artery. That's a heart attack. And the process that led to it started when the person was young, fit, and felt completely fine. Part 2. 5 things modern life is doing to young hearts. Large-scale research tracking heart attack risk across dozens of countries found that 9 modifiable lifestyle factors account for roughly 90% of the risk of a first heart attack. 90%. Genetics plays a role, but daily life is the dominant input. And 5 specific patterns of modern life are accelerating arterial damage in young people faster than any previous generation. Pattern 1. What we're eating. The modern diet, heavy in ultra-processed food, refined carbohydrates, added sugar, and industrial oils, and low in fiber and whole plants, creates multiple simultaneous problems for the cardiovascular system. It raises inflammatory cholesterol levels. It causes repeated blood sugar spikes that are directly damaging to the arterial lining. It drives the accumulation of visceral fat, the deep abdominal fat packed around internal organs, which continuously pumps inflammatory molecules into the bloodstream. One large analysis found that people consuming more than a quarter of their daily calories from added sugar had nearly 3 times the cardiovascular mortality risk compared to those consuming under 10%, 3 times, from one dietary factor. Pattern 2. How we sleep. Short sleep, consistently under 6 hours, increases the risk of coronary heart disease by roughly 48%. During deep sleep, blood pressure naturally drops. The stress systems quiet down. Inflammation markers fall. The cardiovascular system gets a genuine recovery window overnight. Shorten sleep consistently, and that recovery never fully happens. The heart carries its load without relief, night after night, year after year. Over a decade, that accumulation matters enormously. Pattern 3. How little we move. The average desk worker sits for 8 to 12 hours a day. Sustained sitting reduces blood flow, impairs glucose handling, and removes the physical stimulus that the arterial lining needs to stay healthy. Aerobic exercise, walking briskly, cycling, swimming, generates a specific mechanical force against the vessel walls that directly tells the arterial lining to produce more of the protective chemical that keeps arteries open and flexible. Without regular movement, that signal disappears, and the lining slowly loses its ability to protect itself. Pattern 4. Chronic stress. Stress isn't just a feeling, it's a physiological state. When the body perceives chronic stress, it activates two hormonal systems and leaves them running. Cortisol rises, pushing blood sugar up, driving fat storage around the organs, and increasing systemic inflammation. Adrenaline keeps the heart rate elevated and the blood vessels tight. Brain imaging studies have shown that activity in stress centers of the brain predicts actual heart attacks years later. Chronic stress is now recognized as an independent cardiovascular risk factor, comparable in significance to high blood pressure. Pattern 5. Social isolation. This one surprises people most. A major analysis covering over 2 million people across 90 studies found that social isolation was linked to a 34% increase in cardiovascular deaths. Loneliness, the subjective feeling of disconnection, carried similar risk. The mechanism runs through the same pathways as chronic stress: elevated cortisol, increased inflammation, worse sleep, deteriorating habits, all of it feeding back into the arterial damage cycle. Human beings evolved to live in close communities. Social disconnection is, biologically speaking, a state of chronic threat, and the heart pays the price for it. Part 3. What you can actually do. The 5 areas that move the needle. The good news is real. Every one of these 5 drivers is modifiable. Everyone responds to intervention, often within weeks, not years, and none of it requires expensive supplements, special equipment, or a complete life overhaul. Here are the 5 areas where the evidence consistently shows meaningful change. Sleep. First, because everything else depends on it. Without adequate sleep, every other positive change becomes harder. Self-control around food weakens. Motivation for exercise drops. Mood and stress tolerance deteriorate. Inflammation rises. Aim for 7 to 9 hours at consistent times, including weekends. Prioritize morning light exposure early in the day to anchor your body clock. Cut caffeine after midday. Keep the bedroom dark and cool. Remove screens for the last 30 minutes before sleep. If you snore heavily, wake unrefreshed, or have been told your breathing pauses at night, get checked for sleep apnea. It's one of the most underdiagnosed and most fixable drivers of both poor sleep and cardiovascular disease. Eating. Build around 3 things, cut 3 things. The eating pattern with the strongest cardiovascular evidence centers on whole, minimally processed food. Build meals around protein, eggs, fish, legumes, poultry, Greek yogurt. Add a wide variety of plants, vegetables, fruit, whole grains, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. Use good olive oil as your primary fat and include oily fish a couple of times a week. Then cut 3 things: ultra-processed food, added sugar especially in liquid form, and refined carbohydrates eaten in isolation. One practical note: context changes everything. Fruit eaten with nuts or yogurt causes a far smaller blood sugar response than fruit eaten alone. Toast with eggs and avocado is a genuinely different metabolic event than plain white toast. Movement. 3 types, each doing something different. Aerobic exercise. Brisk walking, cycling, swimming, anything that makes sustained conversation noticeably difficult. Restores the arterial lining, raises protective cholesterol, lowers blood pressure, and improves how the body handles sugar. Aim for around 150 minutes per week. High-intensity intervals, even 2 short sessions of 10 to 15 minutes per week, improve a measure called VO2 max, which is one of the strongest predictors of longevity we have. Resistance training, 2 sessions per week targeting major muscle groups, builds the tissue that pulls sugar out of the bloodstream, protects bone density, and reduces all-cause mortality risk. The evidence on resistance training and heart health has shifted significantly in recent years. All 3 types are doing something distinct. All 3 matter. Social connection. Schedule it like the gym. Aim for at least 1 genuine in-person interaction with someone you care about most days of the week. Phone and video calls count when in-person isn't possible. Schedule social time deliberately. As adults, friendships and close relationships don't maintain themselves automatically. They drift apart through inertia, not intention. If you've lost touch with someone who mattered to you, send the message. Most of the time, the other person was waiting for you to go first. The quality of your closest relationships has a direct, measurable effect on cardiovascular health. Working on those relationships is not just emotionally important. It is, in a biological sense, a heart health intervention. Stress. Bring the nervous system back down. The goal is to interrupt the chronic stress response regularly, to give the nervous system real recovery periods throughout the day. 3 approaches have strong evidence behind them. Slow, controlled breathing with longer exhalations than inhalations activates the calming branch of the nervous system. 5 minutes produces measurable changes in stress markers. Regular time in natural outdoor environments reduces cortisol noticeably after around 20 minutes. And addressing the actual source of stress, a draining job, a difficult relationship, a financial situation creating constant background pressure, matters in a way that no breathing technique can substitute for. Persistent low mood, anxiety, or depression are not separate from heart health. Depression roughly doubles the risk of heart disease in young people. Treat it with the same seriousness as any other cardiovascular risk factor. Here's what this all comes down to. Heart disease starts young, not at 55, not at 45. In your teens and 20s, changes are already beginning inside arterial walls that won't produce symptoms for decades. Modern life has created a perfect combination of factors that accelerate that process. Processed food, shortened sleep, prolonged sitting, chronic stress, and increasing social disconnection. And the people who have heart attacks in their 30s and 40s almost never had one obvious cause. They had years of small, quiet, daily inputs that the body absorbed until, eventually, it couldn't anymore. But here's what the evidence also says clearly. Every one of those inputs is changeable. Every one of them responds. Sleep improves within weeks of consistent effort. Arterial function responds to regular exercise measurably quickly. Diet shifts inflammatory markers within months. Social connection lowers cortisol. Stress management changes the cardiovascular system in ways that imaging can detect. The window is open right now, and the earlier you start, the more of that window you get to use. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, share it with someone who could benefit from it, and subscribe to the channel for more practical health and fitness tips.